Rachel, thank you so much for being here. Episode 2, the moment I had to plan for it, right, after my mom, it was just you in my mind.
Aww.
I knew that I wanted to speak to you because I feel like we've always, we kind of grew up together.
We did.
Right?
Yeah.
But from a distance,
Yeah.
we follow each other on social media.
We watched each other, we
Yeah.
were supporting each other from afar.
And you're my senior in secondary school,
Oh my God, yes,
right?
I forgot that. Okay, so firstly, we grew up together, kind of like through mutual friends
Yeah.
in church. And that was how it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot that I
St.
was...
Hilda's.
Yes, exactly.
What was your
that.
CCA? Just curious.
Of course, netball.
You are such a netball.
Yes, typical stereotype.
I'm sorry.
What?
You,
Aiken?
did anyone guess she's netballer?
Okay, anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, that was sort of our history. We've always like sort of just seen each other
Yes.
grow up, right? And I think like where I want to start is when people ask me if I know you, and they ask me, hey, what's Rach really like, right? You know what is my answer always? My first word is always, Rach is warm. Because, first of all, you give one of the most sincere hugs in the world. You give the hugs, right, that release oxytocin in your brain. not just the halal, like, safe hugs. You give, like, real sincere hugs.
No PG hugs, just real hugs.
Yeah, real hugs. In the times that we've interacted, when we're having conversation, you do small things like you put your hand on my hand to reassure a statement or a point. There's always just something about you that is just so warm and reassuring. And I think I say this on behalf of a lot of other people as well. They see you as older sister. And that's actually that's where I would like to start. Because when I did my little bit of research, you are not the oldest sister.
I am not. Although firstly, before we get into that, I just want to say thank you, Aiken, for this opportunity. When you first approached me, I was really excited because I think you're really onto something in this new season of your journey, and really excited to see, you know, what God has in store for you. And of course, in any way, if I can support you in your journey, I would love to. Yeah, so I grew up with a family of 2 other brothers and 14 other cousins.
14 cousins?
Yeah, and they are all boys, except for another girl also with me. So 2 girls and 14 other boys.
Okay.
So I'm the middle child in my immediate family. 2 other brothers, and you know, I always get this question, do you get the middle child syndrome?
Right.
You know, what's it like? And honestly, I think I haven't experienced what a middle child syndrome is like, because I've always felt the love from my brothers. So it's very obvious in my family that, and my parents are also pretty honest and open about it. And my mom, she really favors or loves my elder brother.
Oh, okay.
My dad is extremely close to my younger brother.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful that I have my 2 brothers to like love me and dote on me and give me tough love, right? Tough love even in a sense like, you know, like calling me out, you know, not being an echo chamber. So that's how I grew up. Yeah.
I read and I heard several interviews where you brought up probably the hardest time for maybe your family. You guys moved into a 1-room apartment.
Yeah.
And you know, I grew up in a like lower income family, but that must have been really hard. Like what was going through that like for you?
So that was the year also that my dad was going through a financial crisis, bankruptcy. We had to sell our house, you know, and to move into a 1-room flat. Actually, it's my grandmother's flat, and then she just kind of like let us stay together as a family in 1 room.
Right.
That was, so that was really tough, because I think, of course, right, you grew up in a lower middle income family, but still comfortable, you have your own space, and then moving into a 1-room flat, I think that changed everything for me. Then starting to look at things very differently, right? We lived in Bedok then, the 1-room flat. So whenever we go down to like the hawker centers, like HDB, and you know, we'll look at what people are eating, and it's a luxury to even, like once a week we will aim that we want to eat the ban mian, you know?
Wow.
And that is something that we had to save up for, we had to, you know, like put on our wish list.
Yeah.
And growing up with the experience really made me treasure and realize the importance of, you know, working hard, you know, saving and investing every cent, if possible, that we have.
Yeah.
So I think that really opened my eyes to a lot. One of the key takeaways I had during that season in my life was really looking at what my mom went through.
Right.
She came from a very comfortable family in the past, you know, and then she never had to work in the beginning, but because of what happened to my family, she had to take on 2 jobs, 3 jobs to support the family.
Right.
She gone through disappointments from my dad and different kinds of hardships as well. But through it all, Aiken, I really saw how she kept her joy. And one day I asked her, why are you still so joyful? Not happy, but joyful, Like, how can you... I found it hard that even in the darkest of times, she could find something to be thankful for. And one thing that she taught me was, Rach, people can take away everything from us. Comfort, the roof over your head, savings. But people can never take away your mindset. And that stuck with me for a long time. Because then after that, when I went through my own kinds and experiences of hardships, difficulties, I will always remember that my God, people can take away everything, can take away friendships, being understood, everything. But they can never take away my inner strength and my mindset. And that was what I realized that, I had to hold on to, I had to hone, I had to work on in order to change everything for me. So that was what I took away from that season.
How would you describe, I guess, the relationship between the kids and your parents in that dynamic? How did you grow up? Were you close to your mom, your dad?
Yeah, because of what happened to my family and specifically my mom, all the disappointments that she went through in her marriage and life, we became very close to her because we saw that she remained so strong primarily for us, right? There are times, there are nights where we just hear her crying at night, but in the morning, she will just pull everything together and show up. Show up for herself, for her family. And that also gave us so much strength and respect. I was just maybe 15, 16 years old, but that had such a huge impression in my life forever. And that was what we were also drawn to, her strength, her courage. And I think that was something that made us very close, to her. While she may be sad about what happened in the past, right? But she said one thing that she really gained out of it was the closeness that she had with the kids. Because through that, all of us really stuck with her, became very close. And I think that was something that really transformed the dynamics of our family as well.
Today we were saying that we may not go into the whole story that is usually covered, the success of Love Bonito.
Yes.
What was it like for you growing up in that space and then now slowly easing into being a business owner?
Looking back, I think it was, really an incredible journey with so many highs and so many lows. A couple of my friends and I came together. This was maybe 18 years ago. We came together wanting to sell our pre-loved clothes online for extra pocket money. And back then, Aiken, it was really pre-social media, pre-smartphones.
Was it live journal?
Yes, it was a live journal, and people wired money via ATM transfer, then scan the receipts to us.
Amazing.
Or they would just send cash in an envelope, then we'll receive it by post 3 days later. So that was how it started. We sold our pre-loved clothes on live journal for extra pocket money. And after a while of doing that, we ran out of clothes to sell, but people kept coming back for more because I think it was the novelty and the excitement of shopping and buying online. Online shopping then wasn't like what it is today at all. So I think then we decided, okay, in university, why don't we use the money that we had saved from the early days to go overseas to import clothes to sell? So we did that during school term breaks, during weekends, and that was how it started. And after a while of doing that, I realized that, hey, there's always something missing from the pieces that we imported in. Be it the quality, the fit, the color, there was always something I wanted to change. And I also realized back then that was the time that a lot of international fashion brands were coming into the market, and they all wanted to have some presence to reach out to the Asian women. But they were created primarily for Western women. And so that's when I realized that, hey, a lot of the things don't fit us as well, or no one really thought of the Asian women when they created this piece of clothing. And so, in our final year of university, I decided to drop out of school to start the business proper with my co-founders, to come out to design and manufacture our own collections, specifically for women like ourselves, Asian women, different body proportions, different needs. And that was how Love Bonito started. So Love Bonito started in 2010. And we are officially 13 years old this year.
This 13 years, and sort of, when did things get real in terms of scale? Or rather, like, where were you at in life, in your personal life, beyond just work and uni?
So when we first started the business, entrepreneurship isn't like what it is today. Today is like a buzzword. Back then when we started, I think no one really even thought about that word. And back then it was a rarity for like us. Back then we were young women founders or business owners, you know, to come out to pitch to other organizations or to, you know, be represented on a larger scale of like conferences and things like that. I think back then it was still something that maybe society also was not used to, especially in Asia. So we started very, very early, and really this started as like a passion project first. And something that, oh, my friends and I, we decided, hey, it's something that we've been doing well, it's having momentum, why don't we take it into doing something proper? So for me, the mindset that I have then was like, oh my God, it's so fun, I'm doing it with my friends, it's, you know, and although back then, we sacrificed a lot, right? Because you know, during the weekends and the nights, or weekday nights, we were always busy, like responding to our customers, preparing the posts or the launches to go live. So we sacrificed a lot of social time in that sense, where we couldn't hang out with our friends at the cinemas. Back then, no Netflix or like. So I think that was how we grew along the way. But yeah, when I first started, it was really something more
passion project.
Yeah, passion project. It wasn't something like, okay, this is the business plan, this is all our strengths and weaknesses, this is like that.
And that's the thing, a lot of times in entrepreneurship, maybe people always think like, I need to start with a vision, mission and all of that, right? But there's really no, when people ask me, I'm like, there wasn't a formula for me. I discovered the mission along the way.
Yes, oh, 100%.
Right?
Yes.
As opposed to, oh, I have this grand mission and vision, then I take it through.
There are different ways of starting. Some people, they start with a grand mission and vision and they study, but for you and I, when we first started, right, I think it's more like organic, and it's just something that is more intuitive, and you just see how it goes. Love Bonito, when we first started, our tagline was sharing the love of fashion. But as we grew through the years, we really saw the impact and, you know, the calling of the brand. And really, at the end of the day, I believe that we're here to empower women. I believe that we're not just in the business of fashion, we're ultimately in the business of women. How
is it like to work with friends? Personally, as you know, and the public knows, for me, it was so difficult. It was so great at some point. And then it became so challenging. It became so, somehow when work is thrown into the equation, it almost seems like it becomes something a little bit more complicated. How do you ever experience anything like that?
When I first started, I started off with my best friends, right? So, firstly, I also say that there are very different, it's different for everyone. It's like people also say, oh, but don't start business with your spouse. But some people, like, they thrive, right? So I think it's really different for everyone. I wouldn't make a blanket statement to say, don't start business with your friends, or please start business with your friends. I really think it's very different. But I think when we first started,
it was two of you?
It was three of us.
Three of us, two of you.
Yeah, and I think also, well, there are a couple of, like, throughout my entire life, there are a couple of, like, major, I would consider setbacks in my journey. And I think one of them was when one of my co-founders left the business in 2013. And it was a very, very hard time for me also, because when we first started, it was like, okay, you know what, it was fun, we are best friends, you know, and you know, like, it was just like, okay, we relied on each other so much in that sense. And so when she decided to leave the business in 2013, I felt like my world just crashed. Like, oh my God, what's next? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna continue? What's gonna happen to Love Bonito? You know, and I just questioned myself a lot. Like, okay, what's my purpose in Love Bonito, and what's Love Bonito's purpose in this world? That was on the professional side. And then on the personal side was also like, wow, you know, there were so much tears and sadness, and I had so many questions, like why, you know, I was also, you know, like really sad. Back then, until one day, you know, there were so many nights of crying, and then one day I just thought to myself, okay, I have a choice. I can continue to victimize myself, throw myself pity parties, be sad, be upset, drag my feet around, or I can choose to do something else.
For me, it went from a lot of outward blaming, so I blame the party, I like whatever, and then eventually it moved to, oh, this is really about me. Was it a similar journey for you?
It got to blaming everything possible. The tree that I drove past also, I blamed everything, right? Until you get to a point where, oh my God, you know, if I really want to turn this around for myself, I just have to do it. I have to do all the inner work. I have to work on myself.
Wow.
Right? I really, to a point where I can either choose to continue to be bitter or I can choose to be better. And we all have a choice. I think the only real power that we have in this world is in choosing how we respond in every situation. And that taught me so much. Because while there's so many things that I can't control, I can beg for people to come back, I can plead. I can't control that. But what I can control is myself, my mindset, my perspective, my attitude, my character, everything. And that was when I decided, okay, I'm gonna slowly pick myself up. I'm gonna, you know, also find the strength and courage within myself to show up for myself every day and for the team. And so that was the beginning of my journey of really learning and discovering who am I really? What are my strengths? What is my purpose in this world? What is my purpose in Love Bonito in this season? And at the end of the day, Aiken, if you know that when you start a business also, you know that it's something that really consumes you and takes up so much of your energy and your time. It's not just a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. It's really a 24/7, you know, 7 days a week. And you really have to find a greater reason than just, you know, oh, it's fun, it's exciting. And so that was the journey that I had to go through. Every day I was asking myself, okay, I will show up for my team, my staff who rely on us also to put food on the table for their families. But I think I need a longer term sustainable reason. I can't hold on to this for long. And I remember very clearly one day, I think it was 30th August 2014, there was this customer who wrote in to me and she said, hey Rach, can I come down to share with you a little bit about how Love Bonito had changed my life? And that was the time I was very jaded. Also, you know, I was really like, okay, why does Love Bonito exist? I don't really know its purpose. And I just decided to ask her down, invite her down to the office. So when she came down, she was this mid-20s lady. And I invited her to the office and she sat down and you could tell visibly that her entire left side of her body was immobile. She was walking and talking mainly from the right side. And as she sat down, she told me, you know, hey Rach, over the last 6 months, I had to go through major skull reconstruction, major surgeries because there was something sitting on the left nerve of my brain. And I lost everything, my crown of glory, my confidence, everything. But every day, I choose to put on a piece of Love Bonito clothing because it gives me the courage to look at myself in the mirror when I have to go back for medical checkups, go back for job interviews, go back to face the world. And Aiken, when I heard that, I really teared because it was almost like God telling me, this is why you do what you do. This is why Love Bonito exists. It's not just to sell clothes. It's not. If you know the amount of effort we put behind creating each piece of garment, it's insane, right? We think so much about not just aesthetically looking good, but it's functional, gives you confidence. And that was really the turning point for me, what I needed in my journey back then to really push me and the entire team forward also to realizing that, oh my God, we stand for so much more.
You know, one of the things that I've heard you say before in your leadership journey, you know, you were talking about being exposed, your insecurities being exposed, right? Was that you said like there was a time you tried to emulate other leaders of bigger organizations.
Everything.
Right?
And that was a stage where I was also, like I said, right, I think that departure in 2013 of my co-founder really exposed everything for me, right? I felt so naked, like who am I? I didn't know. And I was on this journey of discovering, okay, Rach, who are you, you know? Like, why are you on this earth? I read so much about back then, you know, Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and how they were like over-glamorized leaders. I'm like, okay, maybe in order to be a successful leader, I need to be like them. I need to be so stern, so harsh, and everything else great about them also I tried to be. And I realized that, firstly, whenever I go back, I'll hate myself because that's not who I am. I felt so, I didn't feel right. I didn't feel like myself. And I felt so inauthentic. That was also an entire journey where I had to go through to dig deep. Okay, if this is not me, then what am I? First and foremost, I needed to debunk the myth of, you know, what success means. Success then was like, okay, you must run a successful business and it looks like this. And you must be a successful leader to run a successful business and it looks like this, right? And for me, I had to reframe that and learn that, okay, we all are created very uniquely.
Yeah.
There are certain things that God had given me,
Yeah.
but there are also certain things that He had intentionally left out in me. And so for me, it's to discover what that is,
Yeah.
right? In Love Bonito, especially in the early years, we used to always do like strengths finders tests.
Yeah, I know
or
you're very big on that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, to discover, oh, why are we wired this way? Why
Yeah.
are you wired this way? And certain attributes and natural traits of yourself. Every time I do it, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm so disappointed. Why are my strengths always all the soft skills? Why don't I have like all the hard skills that he has, that I want as well?
Right.
And it wasn't until one day that one of my colleagues, because I was just joking and I genuinely meant this joke, I just said, I really feel like a clown. Like, what's the point of having all of these soft skills? And I really deep down felt like, okay, maybe I'm really not meant to be a leader. I'm not meant to do this. And one day she told me, her name is Nicole, she said, Rach, but as cliche as it sounds, what you have is not what we have.
Yeah.
And it's true, that's when I realized that, okay, maybe I should stop belittling what I have and start to look at it, understand it, appreciate it as a team. And especially like in this world, we all have different strengths, we all have different functions.
Yeah.
And if we judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will forever be useless.
Yeah.
So I had to reframe my mind. I decided to slowly understand my strengths and natural giftings. I read up about it. I read up extensively about them.
What did you discover about these strengths?
Yeah.
I mean, they must have seen something and said, you have something we don't have. What was it that they saw and then maybe you took some time to discover?
Yeah, like the ability to connect with people, the ability to, just make people feel so comfortable and like, the power to win people over.
Yeah.
While I don't have a lot of things, I have some of these attributes that can be very useful when paired with other people as well.
Yeah.
And so that was when I read up, okay, what does it really mean, What is it that I should hone or use more of? And then slowly trying to be more comfortable with who I am.
Yeah.
And I think it slowly then showed in how I lead, in how I behave.
Wow.
And that was when I also realized that, I'm feeling more like myself, and that means a lot to me. And that's a value I hold true to.
Yes.
That I can go back at the end of the day and look at myself in the mirror and be at peace.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm working on myself, I'm doing something that's true to myself.
Yeah.
So I think that was instrumental part of my journey as well.
When I was also listening to you speak a couple of times, something that absolutely surprised me, might have surprised a lot of people as well, was you were so vulnerable to say that you struggle with people pleasing. And okay, I would think, or people might think, founder,
I know.
boss, there's no way she's a people pleaser.
I know.
There's no way she can be a people pleaser. How do you?
I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Same.
Yeah.
No, and I wanted to ask, how was that journey of discovery of that, and how did you sort of recover?
Yeah, recovering. Yeah. I think it was, whenever we hear the word people pleaser, like, I think I'm something like that, but I'm not that. I try to, because it always sounds so like negative, right? And I, for a long time, didn't want to associate myself with it.
Okay.
Until I was speaking to my coach, and of course, we had the honor of also speaking to Dr. Gabor Mate, and he just called it out immediately. It was like, bring me back to the days on how you grew up.
Right.
Oh my God, Aiken, it was mind-blowing when I really brought him back to the days on how I grew up.
Yeah.
Being the middle child, and always, back then, I remember very clearly always hearing my parents fight. And I was so afraid of conflict that to a point where I will just be so happy with artificial peace. I would just beg them to stop, and if they stop, I'll be so happy. People like my brothers, they would, back then when they were younger, get into trouble in school. My parents have to go down to the principal's office. It was very natural back then, but then for me, I felt like, oh my God, like, why is it causing so much unhappiness or conflict with my family?
Yeah.
And so I then felt like being the child that I am, I had to be the good girl.
Yeah.
Where I had to, not be the one to add on to my parents' headache or arguments.
Yeah.
Or like not finish my food. Because then if I don't finish my food, my parents will get angry. And I had to do everything to please everyone around me just so that there will be peace or artificial peace that I later got to know. And that was a character or personality trait that I carried with me through my years of journeying, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it also got to a point where at work I was so afraid to give critical feedback or constructive feedback. I would skirt around it, or you know, I would sandwich until I cannot find the ham, you know, like I would sandwich it like, and I would be so afraid because I would be so afraid that this person wouldn't take it well, they will not be happy, they will be offended, or they will not like me.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And to really get to a point where I had to call it out for myself and recognizing that, hey, this has to stop.
Right.
One day, my coach, she said, what is one key value that you would want to hold on to for the rest of your life, that you hold on to very dearly? I want to hold on to being an authentic person.
Wow. Yeah.
And she said, but Rach, if you really hold on to being an authentic person, you wouldn't do everything just to please others. You wouldn't not dare to speak up because you're afraid of, you know, conflict.
Yeah.
You will not like, you know, speak the truth because you're afraid of conflict, or you will not bury within yourself and tolerate so many things just because you're afraid of, you know, disrupting peace. And that was when it realized and it hit me that, my goodness, I've been doing that for so long, and it's been like a natural conditioning since I was young.
Yeah.
To do everything to please people, to be a yes person,
Yeah.
to say yes to everyone. But actually deep down, I'm like eating myself out because I'm like so tired, or I don't have the energy for that time. So it's something that I'm recovering from and learning to find the courage to dare to put myself first in that sense, you know?
There are going to be people who are watching, right? And perhaps they identify, they say like, I have to be that model good girl. I have to adhere to and align with all my parents' dream for me and be that good girl, right? What will you say to them, your advice to them who may be trying to find their way?
Oh, wow. Firstly, I would say that I completely understand where you're coming from. It's so difficult. It took me maybe like 32 years, 33 years to recognize that I had this.
I'm so relieved you said that.
Yeah.
Because when I
because
found
you're
out,
31, is it?
when I discovered I was 32, and I just went like, wow, so late I'm so relieved you said that.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
okay, thank
misery
you.
loves company.
Yeah, no, I'm like, okay, Rach took 32 years or so.
33 years.
Everyone watching, she took 32 years or so. So
to recognize
hope.
that, oh my God, I need help. And that this is not healthy. And this is not how I want to live the rest of my life. I empathize if you're going through this. You know, firstly, I want you to know that you're not alone, and especially in our Asian culture, where we feel so much about, we care so much about what our parents think, what our closest friends say, and I think it's a real process. It's a long process to slowly, you know, come to terms with it. First, you have to accept it, and then, you know, work through it. And you can't work through it alone. I think what really helped me was working through it with a professional, with a support group and system that I know wouldn't judge me, that I know would call me out whenever they sense that, hey, Rach, you're relapsing a bit. You know? And that for me was my brothers. You know, I can always trust them to tell me the truth of things, or to call me out. And I really, really appreciate that. And I think it really takes a village to support us through this entire healing process.
Absolutely.
And I think don't be afraid to seek help. I think that has been the greatest decision I've ever made, to really just seek help and to get help and to just start the healing process. And I think don't expect that, you know, immediately in 1 week you'll be totally fine, because I think it's like 33 years of conditioning that I had to uncover, you know, peel off the layers. And recognize triggers. And I think it takes time, but it's so worth it.
Can I just share with you one of my experiences with practicing this like confrontation and healthy anger, right? Just recently, last year, so we were in reservists. So it was a very like inconsequential type of thing for me, you know, like whether or not whatever. But basically one of the superiors had come in and misunderstood a whole situation. And I was on my phone and I thought to myself, I'm going to be out of here like by the end of the day. Don't waste time to even like confront it. But then I thought, maybe it's good practice ground for me to finally...
Low risk also, right?
Low risk. So I, like as he was like nagging, I just was like, okay, I think I'll allow the healthy anger to come. And I felt it. I put down my phone, I said, sir, I think you've completely misunderstood the situation. And I said, you know, our team, and I listed it out objectively. And you know, as a recovering people pleaser, right, and someone who is so conflict
Yeah.
averse, my fear is going to be, this is going to turn out so bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to be...
He's going to hunt me.
He's going to hunt me. I'm going to be blacklisted. My team
Yeah.
is going to think I'm stupid.
Yeah. People are going to talk bad about you.
Yeah. Why be dramatic in a
Yeah.
reservist, right, and whatever. But the most amazing thing happened. He flipped the other way around and was like, oh my gosh, I did not know this was what happened.
Wow.
And then he said, I'm so sorry this happened. Thank you for bringing it up for me, to me. And, you know, please, all of you, do not stay back after this because, you know...
It's been cleared.
It's been cleared. And I realized in that moment that I had to sit through that discomfort of confronting, of giving the feedback that actually value added to the company, to the team.
Yeah.
And that it does not mean,
Yeah.
confrontation and conflict does not mean always rejection, fear, negative outcome.
Yes, but for so long that was
Yeah.
what we thought.
Yeah.
And that was the fear that stopped us from speaking out authentically, truthfully.
Yeah.
What I really love about your story, Aiken, is that you actually really, number one, totally felt all the emotions.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that
Yeah.
I used to suppress. I used to think, shit, I'm getting angry, I'm getting
Yeah.
frustrated, it's unhealthy, or I'm a bad person.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, it's to really feel all of it and recognize it. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm feeling angry now. And of course, now is not the time to confront or bring it up. But it's also how you, number two, I think you really let it simmer down and breathe it all out
Yeah.
first, and then address the situation as objectively as you could. And I
Yeah.
think that helped the entire situation so much.
Yeah.
And that's also something I learned, right? Like,
Yeah.
confrontation doesn't have to be highly emotionally strong, you
Yes.
know? Like, it can be actually very a mature talk.
Yeah.
Like, hey, actually, you know, like what you did, you just clarified very objectively and listened. So I think that's also something that for me I learned that, you know, can
Yeah.
really be very helpful as we go through this like
Yeah.
healing journey.
Yeah. I also suppose, like, in this opportunity, when we're talking about some of your greatest setbacks and lessons, there was something that I realized I've observed from the sidelines on social media. I mean, we've grown up together, right? And one of it was that I think you spoke publicly about this only one time for like 2 minutes, but there was a point in when we were younger,
Yeah.
and everybody's congratulating you because you were married when you were younger. I even feared treading around this topic with you.
Yeah.
I didn't even dare to go like, oh my gosh, like how is she gonna take me
Yeah.
wanting to ask her about this?
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing with us
Yeah.
that journey of
Yeah.
your first marriage?
And I think for me, the value of authenticity that I hold so true to is also like accepting and embracing all of myself, the good, the bad, the ugly, the failures, the successes. And I was first married when I was 22.
22.
And I was really young. And we were dating for like a good 5-6 years, you know, and it was a natural progression that, okay, you're steady, we enjoy each other's company, it's 5-6 years, maybe it's time to get married, is the next best thing to do. We were working, you know, we have a stable income in that sense. Maybe it's time to get married because we've been dating for so long, and we never really stopped to question, like, are we the right partners for each other for the rest of our lives? Do we have our values, principles aligned? And like, you know, so many things that a pre-marriage couple should ask each other. It was just only because there was like pressure from society that, hey, you dated 6 years, 7 years, you should get married, it's time, you know? And we just fell into it immediately, like, okay, yeah, it makes sense, let's just get married. And, you know, of course, when we got married, things didn't work out for both of us, and we called it off 1 year later. And it was very tough for me, Aiken, because going into that decision was so hard. I come from a family of pastors. My mom, you know, they're very active in church. They serve in church. So being a people pleaser also, it held me back for so long to dare to bring up that maybe we should go our separate ways and the divorce word, because I was so afraid that if I were to do this, how will it reflect on my mom, my brother? After all, you know, they are leaders in the church. And for myself also, people were saying that, oh, but you're such an example to youngers. Are you sure you want to do this? And it really got to me, you know.
Wow.
And I doubted myself for so long until one day I realized that I think enough is enough. I want to live a life that as long as I'm accountable to God, I think I want to be at peace with the decision.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, did things get really, really real when you had to move in together and then, go from dating to now our lives are gelled together?
Yeah. And I think it's true, right? When you live together, that's one, right? Whether or not you can work through things. And the other thing is also, as we got married and in the early 20s of our lives, where we're also slowly starting to establish who we are, finding our footing as human beings, and then we realized that, we were growing apart so much. And, of course, even seeking counseling, getting help, and realizing that, okay, maybe the best move for us is to go our separate ways. And it's a choice. It's a choice that we both made, especially when I was so young, right? But that was a setback that really opened up my eyes to so much more. And a lesson that I carry with me for the rest of my life.
What changed? What were the signs that go like, wow, this really is not working?
I think you're also at a different stage of maturity.
Yeah.
I also wasn't as aware or wise enough to know that, a marriage is a marriage for the rest of your life. And you really need to know that one of the most important decisions that we make in our lives is who we choose to spend the rest of our lives with. It can make or break you.
Yeah.
And I say the same for my ex-husband. It can make or break him, right?
Yeah.
That was when I realized that we actually didn't sit down, think through, talk through, really at the end of the day, beyond just enjoying each other's companionship, because marriage and that life partnership is beyond just being able to be with each other every day. It's also, as we are two individuals with two baggages, traumas, experiences, working through our own, experiences, are we the right or the best fit for each other?
So Rach, you mentioned a fear of disappointing your family, etc., your friends at that time regarding the divorce.
Yeah.
How did they eventually come to respond to it and accept it?
I think my mom, one day, she knew I was held back, and I was very fearful of, the implications that it would have on the family and myself and everything. She came and she told me, at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to wake up next to him and each other for the rest of your lives. If you can continue that way, it's fine. But if you can't, then just do something for yourself. And I think that also gave me strength to recognize and to have that honest and adult conversation with my ex-husband, and that, maybe, and to come to terms that maybe the best way forward is to go our separate ways. So that was how it was. I
don't mean to make this more painful than it is already, but could you talk us through, because when we talk about this, sometimes we can gloss over it, but for you, what was it like to, this is happening, we're going to sign the papers, there's logistics to it, we now have to move out. What did that process look like for you, and how did you get through it?
A blur. And it's almost something so new, right? I mean, at our age then, right? Okay, I realized I was maybe about 24.
Yeah.
At our age then, of course, no one talks about all of these things, like what's the right step. So having to even see divorce lawyers, Aiken, is so scary and intimidating.
Right.
And almost I felt so ashamed back then, and having later to own all of that shame and heal from it is also something I knew I needed to work through. But I think at the end of the day is really relying so much on my family and the strength and the support that they gave me, gave me the courage and gave me the strength to get through this period, and I imagine it must have been so tough for my ex-husband also, and definitely a very painful experience for him as well. But I think looking back, I'm sure he's also looking back on hindsight, that had to happen for both of us to also grow to become better individuals.
You are now a mom,
yes,
happily married and a mom.
Yes.
Many people might think, wow, you had one failed marriage, or how did it ever stop you from going, I'm never going to be married?
I know, that's such a good question, because my girlfriends also asked me that. It's easy, to come out of a failed marriage and think, okay, I'm never going to get married, I'm going to be the independent woman. And while there's nothing wrong with that,
absolutely.
I grew up in a family where I've always known that I would want to be in a family unit with with children and things like that. So I'm so grateful, Aiken, that I actually grew up in a family of like my parents, my uncles, my aunties, and watching what love is, watching what a successful marriage is. And that gave me so much strength. I really held on to that. I remember my pastor also asked me before, are you afraid now of love, of commitment? I said no, because I have seen, you know, with my own eyes firsthand, what a successful, healthy marriage is. And a successful, healthy marriage is not just we're happy every day.
Yes.
It's how we work through the difficulties, the challenges, and how we repair whenever there's an argument.
Yeah.
And that was what I saw, especially my uncles and my aunties' marriages. And that really gave me so much like hope and light.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right? Because who would have thought you're drawing strength actually from, hey, this is
from
my...
watching the examples of my uncles and aunties,
And were they compassionate and empathetic towards your situation? And giving you advice, I don't know.
I grew up with a family, all pastors, missionaries. It was very stressful. But I think what helped was also me going to them very honestly on my struggles, my difficulties, praying with them. There were so many nights of counsel with them. And at the end of the day, it's also like, it's always a choice. We always have a choice.
Totally.
If this is a choice you feel like you want to make and you want to live with for the rest of your life, then so be it. And I think that released me also from the fear of like, you know, their approval and everyone else's approval.
I love that the strength of their marriage, the strength of their walk and their journey gave you a strength and a faith, right, beyond your own experience. That is so powerful. And that is a testament to how our lives, right, impacts people whether we know it or not.
100%.
Our own personal decision, our journey impacts somebody whether we know it or not. And it is so powerful to hear that I may have gone through the failure of my first marriage, but when I look around now, I still have the faith because I see so many of my family members. It can work. It looks like this.
And you showed me exactly what it looks like and that it doesn't have to be, you know, we don't have to settle in that sense.
So how did you meet Leo?
I wasn't ready for this. How did I meet Leo? Leo, I met him in church.
Okay.
And Leo is 14 years older than me. So we would have never crossed paths, not in school, not in like, so that's how I met Leo in church. And I think, in a cell group, and that was how it slowly.
So it's like a friendship first.
Although I think for him it was love at first sight. He's gonna kill me. That's my side of the story, but it's okay. He's not here.
Leo, you need to come on the show if you like to clarify.
I think for him it's love at first sight, but
women always know. Is it true? Women always know. Like, you can feel the guy like just absolutely.
I don't know lah. I think at that point I also like, I also don't dare to like think too much. So I just like, okay. Anyways, if something works, it works. And so that was how like the friendship developed and then slowly blossomed.
Oh wow! What is right before when things got serious? I imagine like. Did you have to confront any fears of your past? Any relationship?
I think for me, I just wanted to make sure that this is the last marriage I will have. I said I don't want to make the same mistake. I think one thing that I should learn from it is I should be more mature and wiser. And so for me, that meant also like going through more like counseling, premarital counseling, talking through things, you know, really like talking deeper stuff. Because growing up when I was people pleasing, there was certain questions or maybe some things I was afraid to unearth or ask, only because I was afraid that it might trigger someone or have conflicts. But I realized, you know, after my first experience with my marriage that failed, I realized also that, hey, actually all these things need to be ironed out and talked through early. So that was also something that we made sure that, you know, we had to go through. And then after that, I really believe once that commitment is done, you both go in with your eyes wide open, then it's a choice. And love is a choice. Love is not a feeling. Love is choosing to choose each other every day, even when we don't feel like it. And I think that is something that, I really learned from this entire experience.
So is he more similar to you or different?
What do you think?
Different.
He's extremely different. He is
opposite.
Leo is like, he's not just opposite, we're extreme opposites.
Okay.
So for example, he's very introverted, I'm very extroverted.
Okay, okay.
I'm very funny, he's not.
Leo, again, if you would like to clarify.
No, but like, he's very OCD. I am like messy.
Oh my
He's extreme.
gosh.
So like, it's like, wow, God cannot have put two more different people in that sense
Interesting,
together.
yeah.
Right? But I think so grateful that we're so aligned in values,
Yeah.
principles, how we think about family, how
Yeah.
we think about relationship. I think he has also gone through his own share of like experiences and lessons.
Yeah.
So I think we came to each other. I think like we always say, if I had met you earlier, I don't think I would like you. You know, it's like we had to get to a point where we get to a certain level of maturity.
Yeah.
So that was how it was.
Okay, Leo, I'm going to throw you a bone here. How would you say his differences complement and absolutely value add to who you are?
Leo absolutely grounds me. And I think I needed someone who is so mature and so secure in a sense where he just allows me to do what I want and do what I love, as in like pursuing my ambitions, my passions. And he's just always there supporting me, like rooting for me, and of course giving me feedback and praying for me. But I'm so thankful that he's so secure in a sense where he knows who he is, and there is so much Aiken.
Yeah.
And that was also when I learned that, you know, really, like I shared, like the single most important decision we can ever make in our lives is who we choose to spend our lives with. Because they can either hold you back or they can either, you know, unleash you to become more of who you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And so grateful for that, especially in this new season where we become parents. So the interesting thing is Leo has always been quite lukewarm about being a dad. He's like, I'm okay without a kid, you know. But like seeing how he is now with Ollie, our son, it's like amazing, Aiken. I would have never known that this side of him existed.
Unlocked.
Yeah, totally
Amazing.
unlocked and unleashed, right? And I tell him so much all the time that, my goodness, I can't imagine if you're not a father. You are an amazing dad.
Wow.
Leo is amazing. He really is. He's amazing dad to Ollie, and I'm so glad that we got to see that for him. And he got to experience that kind of love that is so special.
Yeah.
So,
Is he believing that more now?
Yes,
I'm sure.
yes. He's like,
I'm sure.
how did I ever think that I never wanted a kid?
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people change all the time. You never know, right?
People change, we evolve. There are certain assumptions of ourselves that even maybe we ourselves needed to debunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. I love that. And I love how your story, your romantic story even unfolded. I think I draw strength from this, you know, because I always tell people, like, I grew up in a broken family. I did not have the resource of seeing the healthy marriages, and it has taken a lot. It didn't give me any references, you know, but I see you and I see what you've been through, and it gives everybody so much hope. And along that, right, I wanted to ask, you know, with regards to being divorced, and then with regards to now have your husband who is 14 years older, one can easily very simply stereotype.
I'm sure.
Oh, divorce, and wow, this one. What are those stereotypes, first and foremost, and how did you sort of face them and overcome them?
You know, I always joke that, because Leo is 14 years older than me, so he's 50 this year. So whenever we introduce ourselves to people, I always joke like, oh, between the both of us, one of us have been divorced, and they will always look at him like, oh, it's actually me, right? But it's so funny because I guess there's so much stereotypes, like you say, and for me, it took me a while to realize that I'm more than the labels that society or the world puts on me. And how can I also not be ashamed of my past while I have made so many mistakes, I have had so many failures. I am proud that through all of that, I have not wasted any of that experience or pain. And have also, you know, worked through the process and grown from it. And I think that's what, for me, that's why I'm like, I'm not ashamed to talk about it, right? It's something that I also hope that through this, like, people learn something from it, like, don't make the same mistakes that I did. And I think that's something also, that's why I really believe that the cracks that we have in our lives is where the light shines in.
Yeah. So was there any like labels and stereotypes where you're like, oh, wow, he's so much older than I am? Again, what will people think?
I don't know what they really think, right? I guess maybe sometimes people
Did you just
really
have to shut that out?
Yeah, and I think I also like maybe sometimes from the reaction, or like even recently at church, it's just a very Ollie was a Sunday school teacher, and then we were just talking, then he was saying that, oh yeah, my wife is, I'm 10 years older than my wife. I'm like, me and Leo, we are 14 years apart. And you know what he said, Aiken? He said, oh, who's the older one? Oh my God. I nearly took my shoe and threw it. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean, who's the older one? And Leo loves it. He guys at it. Well, I'm just saying, it's also things like that. Like, okay, this is of course the silly part of it. But I'm sure that I don't know, right? And honestly, I also don't want to care.
Yes,
that, you know,
very good.
That what they think of me or my past or anything.
I love that you're even struggling to find an answer because this should not matter.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that.
And I also think that at the end of the day, you know, I know myself and what I've been through and what I've learned from it.
Yeah.
And I think my confidence really comes from that. My confidence shouldn't come from, you know, whether people approve of me or not.
Totally.
And I think confidence is really, at the end of the day, whether or not you approve or whether or not you like it or like me, I'm okay with that because I know who I am.
And you own your truth 100%.
I do my best to.
Whether it's something that has passed, something you're not proud of, you absolutely owned it, you made good of it, and that is remarkable. That is absolutely remarkable. As we are coming to a close, I've got a few.
No, we're closing already.
We can talk for. I think we were telling your team they can talk. Your team told me you can talk for 7 hours. Is it? We can have a director's uncut version.
Yeah, sure.
But as we come to a close, these are some like fanboy questions because I absolutely adore what you do professionally and all of that, right?
Really? Do you buy our clothes?
No, I never buy for myself. In fact, the last time I asked you about it, your answer to me was, it's not something I'm passionate about, and I get it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we get that question all the time, like, when are you going to do men's? And I think maybe not now.
Leo, can you come
Everybody is asking Leo, by the way, so maybe. Yeah.
No, but one of my fanboy questions is, right, as a leader, a co-founder, I'm a creator, and so often my face is the brand. I am the product almost. How did you make that distinction to say, I am not these titles, I am not the business I've built? How did you separate that from your personal identity?
How long more do you have on the camera? No, really. Just now you say you're 30 minutes.
You got more?
Okay.
For so many years, you are Rachel Lim, co-founder.
Yes.
You know, I even tried to Google your Chinese. What's your Chinese name?
Ling En Yu.
Ling En Yu.
Yes, 宇宙的宇，恩典的恩。
Wow.
Do you know?
No idea. En Tian is grace, right?
Yes.
But for so long, Rachel Lim, co-founder,
I know.
Love Bonito.
My whole life.
Your name is never separate from Love Bonito.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
make that separation to say, hey, I am not Love Bonito, I'm not my business, I'm not my title? Have you even made that distinction?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's very hard. For all my adult life, or for as long as I could remember, Love Bonito unofficially has already been around for 18 years. For as long as I could remember, that's all I knew. That's all that I have been working on with the team. And it got to a point where also like, okay, you know, there are days where Love Bonito does well, we achieve milestones, I get on a personal high. And when we have setbacks, we have failures, I crashed personally. And it got to a point where it's so unhealthy for me, where if Love Bonito does well, I'm good. If it doesn't, I'm down. And it's so volatile to a point where I felt that, okay, I'm going to lose my mind, right? And it wasn't until I decided that, you know, I have to separate myself from the business in a sense where I'm Rachel Lim and Love Bonito is a part of me. It's a huge part of me and it will always be a part of me. But I am so much more. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I think I'm also a great mom, I'm a great wife, I think. I'm learning, but yes, a daughter, you know, I'm so much more. There's so much more, like I'm multifaceted. There's so much more than me than just the business that I've built with my co-founders and an incredible team. And it wasn't until I was confronted when I realized that, you know, like, hey, you know, a few years into the business, I would want to one day hire a CEO to come on board to run the business with me, right?
Right.
And it was quite shocking even to my investors because to them like, but why you're the active co-founder, why are you not the CEO, you know? Why do you not want to be the CEO and things like that? And it got to a point where I had to realize also that and tell my investor then, you know, back then this was like this was almost 7 years ago, and I was telling him that, you know, but I feel like I'm not the right CEO. I'm not made to be a CEO at the next stages of Love Bonito's growth. Firstly, I've never been a CEO. I've never taken on that title. As glamorous and as prestigious as it is, it's a really great title, by the way, but I've always felt that I will always value add to the business in a very different way that is maybe not like a CEO. I've always known that.
Oh, okay.
And it took me a while to really come to terms and realize that, yeah, I'm not the CEO. I feel like I'm not, and I will hire someone to run this with me.
7 years in the making.
7 years in the making, and you know, it was also the journey of finding the right person. The second most important decision in your life is to find the right partner to do this with you, right? In the business, to find someone who really understands deeply and who really cares about the business and the people as much as you do.
Wow.
Right? I think even my investor was saying back then, like, oh, but you can just take on the title as a CEO and the name and build your team around you. And that's right. But I've always felt like I'm not. And I didn't know back then why.
Okay.
And so the journey began where I searched for a CEO. I spoke to like hundreds of different candidates, but there was always something missing. Until I met Dion, who I met her at a women's networking event. And after that, you know, I would ask her out to just get to know her better, pick her brains on things. And that's when I realized, oh my God, this girl, there's something about her, right? And I think we can groom it out of her. And so that was the journey it began. Dion joined Love Bonito first as a CCO and worked her way all the way up to being our CEO eventually. And for me, I've always known that, you know, while I will always be the co-founder of Love Bonito, somehow I never felt like I was a CEO. And when the announcement was finally made that Dion Song, the first CEO of Love Bonito, everyone, literally everyone on LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp, everyone was like, oh my God, Rach, are you okay? Do you get sacked by the board? Are you not good enough? Is something happened? Like, and it really got to me, right? Because it's like, I thought I was okay. And when all these things came, is it because you're not good enough, the board? And there were, of course, murmurs and things like that. But for me, you know, it's always going back again to myself and digging deep. And going back to why I made this choice, why I felt this way, why I wanted to hire a CEO to run this together with me, why I didn't want to take up the title as glamorous and as prestigious as it is. And that was when I remember, Aiken, that all of us really are wired so differently. We are gifted so differently. I look at Dion now and the level that she's running the company. I always look at her and I think, how can I continue to admire your giftings while not questioning mine?
Ooh.
Because it really makes me like, oh my God, she was made for this. Like, it's like you're hardwired to do this. There are certain things that we're all hardwired and we're all born to do. She's like a fish in water when she does this.
Wow.
Of course, there are so many challenges, so many difficulties, but she thrives in it. That's a playground. I always tell her, Dion, you really are meant to do what you're doing now.
Ooh.
And for me to be able to see that brings me so much joy, because it's like, Dion, this is you coming into your own. This is you, you know, growing into more of who you're meant to be. Then at home I will think, okay, then what about me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll think, no, really.
Can I just say, for you to say, you're literally saying, I'm not the best person for this job.
Yeah, it's true. I'm
for
not
my
the best
company
person.
that I founded.
I'm not.
And to sacrifice that position and watch someone thrive without bitterness for something that you own and built.
You know, like it took a lot of humility to put my ego and pride aside, to recognize that this is not me, the CEO role is not me.
Wow.
And I remember the very first time, the very first board meeting that I saw Dion run, while I was the one that, you know, made her CEO, put everything in place, after the board meeting ended, I remember I had to like compose myself. It was pre-COVID. I had to compose myself, go to a room and cry. I was crying because I was like, oh my God. Firstly, there were so many emotions. I'm so proud of Dion, while I'm so jealous of her and her strengths.
Wow.
While I also question myself, then what am I left with really, you know? And for me, it's like coexisting and living with that tension of, like I said, admiring someone without questioning my own, right? And then really for me to just work on myself, discover myself. If I'm not the CEO of Love Bonito, then what am I? What's my path? What's my unique strength? You know, what's my giftings that I can use to serve the world in? And that's an ongoing question that I'm still learning to discover. But I'm so grateful that one of the biggest lessons my first marriage taught me is not to just sail through life and go through life because it's the next reasonable step. It may be reasonable to the eyes of men to, yeah, of course, be a CEO, be the CEO, this is your company, you're the co-founder. But I never felt the peace of doing that.
Wow.
And it took a lot of courage and, you know, confronting my pride and ego and coming to terms that this is not you, Rach. Don't fall for it.
Wow, that is huge. That is like one of the, wow. Because really, here I am on the outside thinking, oh, it's a business move. She's doing this, so she can...
it's a business move, yes,
no,
of
yes,
course,
yes,
it's better for the
for
business.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, she can go and free up and do other things like she wants to do. But there is so much humility and depth and, like you say, doing the inner work.
Yeah.
And to admit that publicly here even.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you know when she took that meeting...
Sometimes I forget that we're public. I just feel that we're
oh,
both
great, that's the idea. I mean, to even
no,
say,
but I know,
I'm happy, I'm jealous, but it coexists
Yeah.
and I can make peace with that, I can work through it and still champion her and the company.
Yes, 100%. And I think what really drove me at the end of the day is, as a co-founder of the business, what is the best decision for the company at this stage in terms of who should be the CEO, honestly. And I think going back to that you know, Rach is not you, and yeah.
Oh my.
Go and find something else.
And you know what? If this was an indication, right, of what's next for you, I would just like to say that even from the outside, I'm starting to see that come through because I am always in awe about what you do. You talk to some of the world's best leaders and you've used your platform, you've used your strengths, the ability to win people over, the ability to influence, and you constantly use that to empower women. Whether or not you've done it on a live journal website, whether or not you've done it in the design of your clothing, whether you've done it now in a more direct form, like interviewing, holding, you know, some of you guys may not even know, like Rach does these small little huddle together, sharings. These are things that are done behind closed doors, no one will see you, no one will know, but to me, that is you stepping into that purpose as you step away from saying, CEO may not be me, but I'm looking to find. And the amazing thing is, you didn't leave that knowing what's next for you.
Exactly. It's not that I left that knowing that there's something shiny or a sexy role or opportunity waiting for me. I really left that knowing that, okay, I'm going to restart this journey of discovering who I am in this next stage of my life. It's very scary, Aiken, if I may be very honest, because I can rest in the laurels of like, okay, I've been the co-founder of Love Bonito. It has been relatively successful. Why do I go and shake the boat and rediscover something or start something new that might fail, or, you know, find myself again, put myself in such an uncomfortable situation where I have to question, look, search, dig deep. There's this quote that I really hold true to, you know. It says, don't die with the music still inside of you.
Ooh.
And somehow I just feel that, you know, while I'm so grateful to have had the journey, you know, that I have had learning and growing so much, I just feel that there is something more. And I'm also so excited, yet so scary, you know. I'm so excited to also see what's next and how can I, through the experiences that I've had, the maturity that I've had harnessed over the years, and my natural strengths and giftings, how can I use that to serve the world next? And that is, to me, I don't know, I don't have the answer now, but I guess
it certainly seems like it's taking shape, and I've been so blessed by that already. And I know so many people who are, and I am so excited to see what it looks like for you. You have busted through every label imaginable and defied it and owned it. And you know what? Because especially the last part, I did not know that at all. And if anything, after this interview, right, my respect for you has multiplied, because that is truly, truly, when I ask you how to detach, wow, you lived it out there. You lived it out in a business decision, you lived it out in now exploring the unknown, in stepping into your own, and I wish nothing but that for myself and everybody who is watching. So thank you for leading the way, Rach.
Thank you, Aiken. And I think for me, I also want to encourage people that we are more than our titles, we are more than our businesses. I think for me, I was really trying to let that go, free myself from clinging on to the identity that I'm the co-founder, this is who I am, success is, you know, and for me, it's to really, it's not about what I am, but it's about who I am at the end of the day. And who I am is really defined by our values, our principles, our character.
Absolutely. Okay, last two, not intense questions, I promise. This one just me being a kepo. I like to ask this to a lot of people who I love and respect. What do you spend your money on? And what do you like to eat? Because I'm a food guy.
I love to eat everything, Aiken.
Really?
I'm a foodie. I grew up with, I'll answer the second question first.
Can.
I'm a foodie. I love food.
Okay.
I love anything chocolate. I'm a glutton. In fact, like my Circle DNA results test, one of the most alarming things that they warned me is that you have a high chance of stress-induced obesity. Because food is my comfort, it's my everything. When I'm sad, I'm upset at anything, I will just eat. I'm happy, I also eat. Sad, I also eat. Angry, I also eat. So yes, I love food. Generally, like I'm craving for nasi lemak now.
Okay.
So maybe after this, I'll go and get nasi lemak.
This is a real foodie, because you don't, you know, like people who are not foodie like to ask, like, what is your favorite? You know, foodies have no favorite. It's what they're craving at that moment.
It changes anytime.
Yeah.
So yes.
Nasi lemak for today. Okay.
Nasi lemak for today. The first question.
What do you spend your money on?
Besides my son, I spend my money on myself, in investing in myself, in causes, retreats, basically working on myself. I think we spend so much money sometimes on material goods that bring us temporal or short-term happiness. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do too. Sometimes I pamper myself. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I've realized that the biggest investments that we can make is in ourselves, right? Because that's what we will always bring with us for the rest of our lives, that no one can take away from us. So therapy sessions, coaching sessions is freaking expensive.
Yes!
So expensive.
So expensive.
Yes, but it's so worth it.
So worth it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I also want to normalize.
Yeah.
You know, while we also, yes, we can spend on material things, but please don't also forget to invest in yourself,
Love
in
that.
the non-material, the non-tangible things that will really, like you said, right, bring multiple of growth and joy into our life.
Okay, as we close, I would like to read a quote that you posted today. I thought it was so apt and beautiful. Rachel posted today, you are going to move on. You are going to wake up one day and realize certain things no longer bother you. They may cross your mind from time to time, but it will not feel the same. And it is then you will realize you have grown in beautiful, healing ways. And I absolutely think that your growth journey has been healing for all of us. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing your heart and your life here. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
Yay, thank you. Okay, I was so, the light so low, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we're done.
We are?
Yeah, we're done.
Awesome.
Should we get her nasi lemak, everybody?
No lah, it's fine lah. I already will order tomorrow. Oh, don't worry, please. Yeah.
That was so powerful. Thank you, Rach.